From the moment we're old enough to understand words like trust and honor, we're taught that loyalty is a virtue, something pure, noble, and unwavering. Parents preach it, teachers reward it, movies romanticize it. We grow up believing that real loyalty is unconditional, that the people who love us will stand by us no matter what, through failure, change, or crisis. But what if that belief is not only false, but dangerous? What if the loyalty we cling to is not a truth, but a carefully constructed social illusion? A story we're told to feel safe in a world that isn't. That's the brutal question Machiavelli forces us to confront. Because once you begin to look closer, the cracks appear everywhere. The friend who disappears when your status drops. The colleague who praises you until a promotion is at stake. The family member who retreats when your pain becomes inconvenient. These aren't rare betrayals, they are common, even predictable. Yet we continue to believe in the myth of loyalty because the alternative, facing the conditional, shifting nature of human commitment, feels like staring into a void. If loyalty isn't real, then what can we count on? But maybe the deeper betrayal isn't from others. Maybe it's the story we tell ourselves. The illusion that people are loyal by nature blinds us to the truth. Most loyalty is circumstantial. It depends on mutual benefit, timing, opportunity, and sometimes fear. That doesn't make people evil, it makes them human. The myth of loyalty comforts us, yes, but it also weakens us. It leaves us vulnerable to exploitation, betrayal, and false expectations. And that's where Machiavelli's brilliance lies, in cutting through the fantasy to show us how things truly work. Because only when we let go of the illusion can we begin to build relationships rooted in clarity, not naivety. Only then can we stop chasing idealistic promises and start navigating reality with strength, not hope. The truth may hurt, but it protects. And in that protection, there's power. Niccolò Machiavelli didn't despise loyalty, he simply refused to romanticize it. His genius was in exposing the truth that most people are too afraid to admit. Loyalty is not a sacred moral principle. It's a transaction. It survives not because people are good, but because it makes sense. For now, in The Prince, he writes that men are by nature fickle, easy to persuade, but hard to keep persuaded. That single line dismantles centuries of naive belief. We want to think people remain loyal because of who we are, our kindness, our character, our connection. But Machiavelli shows us the darker truth. People stay when it serves their interests, and they leave when it doesn't. This isn't a condemnation of humanity. It's an unfiltered observation of how humans survive. Every relationship, personal, political, professional, exists within a constantly shifting equation of benefit versus risk. Loyalty persists only when the equation favors staying. When benefits disappear, when risks increase, when better options appear. So does the betrayal look at history. Look at your life. The pattern is everywhere. Friends who disappear when your fortune fades. Allies who turn when the power balance shifts. Employees who pledge allegiance until a better offer comes along. These aren't moral failures, they're human defaults. Machiavelli didn't create this reality, he revealed it. And that revelation stings. It challenges everything we've been taught. We were raised to believe loyalty is about character, that real ones stick around no matter what. But Machiavelli forces us to grow up. He replaces fairy tales with frameworks. He replaces hope with clarity, because the truth is, when you understand that loyalty is conditional, you stop being surprised by betrayal, and you start preparing for it. You stop pleading for people to stay, and you start building incentives they can't ignore. You start thinking like a strategist, not a sentimentalist. And in a world where everything changes, the ability to think in terms of interests, not illusions, is what separates the broken from the unbreakable. You don't need to study Renaissance politics to understand the fragility of loyalty. Just look around. Loyalty breaks not in theory, but in practice, in the boardrooms of billion-dollar companies, in friendships that fall silent, and marriages that crumble without warning. We've all lived it. The business partner who seemed ride or die until profits declined. The coworker who laughed at your jokes until you became competition. The partner who once swore forever but now only shows up in court. These aren't just anecdotes. They're symptoms of a deeper truth that most loyalty is conditional, and most conditions are invisible until they're violated. Machiavelli saw it play out in the fall and return of the Medici family in Florence. One day the crowds chanted for the Republic. The next they welcomed back the same rulers they once overthrew. Allegiances flipped, not out of love or principle, but out of opportunity and fear. It wasn't betrayal, it was survival. And it still is. In American corporate culture, we see executives tout company loyalty while cutting thousands of jobs during a downturn. We watch politicians abandon lifelong principles the moment polling data shifts. And in our personal lives, we learn the hardest way possible that some people only love us when we're useful. But that's the thing. It's not personal. it feels personal. Of course, it feels like betrayal, like moral collapse, like a shattering of something sacred. But Machiavelli tells us to look deeper. It's not about you. It's about them, their needs, their pressures, their calculations. You were never the center of their loyalty. Their self-interest was. And once that interest changed, so did their allegiance. Harsh. Maybe, but liberating. Absolutely. Because once you stop expecting loyalty to be absolute, you stop building your life on emotional quicksand. You stop trusting blindly and start observing carefully. You ask better questions. What are they gaining by being close to me? What might make them leave? What happens when I'm no longer valuable to them? These aren't paranoid questions, they're protective ones. They shift your mindset from victimhood to vigilance. Machiavelli doesn't ask us to stop believing in connection. He asks us to see it without illusions, to understand that love, friendship, and loyalty are not always lies, but they are always tested. And most people will pass or fail those tests, not based on how they feel, but on what they fear, what they want, and what they think they stand to lose. Know that, and you stop being surprised. You start being prepared. We live in a world of masks, and nowhere is that more true than in the realm of loyalty. From the outside, everything looks solid. The handshake, the promise, the company retreat photos, the vows spoken under white lights. These performances reassure us. They tell us we're safe, that someone has our back, but beneath the surface, Machiavelli reminds us lies a different truth. What people appear to be is rarely what they are. In The Prince, he wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." That isn't just a political insight, it's a psychological one. We mistake the appearance of loyalty for loyalty itself. And in doing so, we set ourselves up for betrayal. The modern world rewards performance. We curate our loyalty the way we curate our social media, publicly polished, privately transactional. Employees praise their companies while updating their resumes. Politicians swear allegiance to causes while courting corporate donors. Even in friendships, we play roles. The supportive best friend, the loyal ally, while silently weighing how much we're getting back. This isn't hypocrisy, it's survival. Machiavelli understood that image isn't just part of power, it is power. And appearances are often more effective than the truth, because they give people something to believe in, even when belief is unjustified. This is why betrayal hits so hard. It's not just the act, it's the shattering of the performance. It's the moment we realize we've been in a play and didn't know it. The boss who laid off half the team after praising their hard work, the spouse who leaves after years of rehearsed affection, the friend who ghosts you after years of birthday toasts. What breaks isn't just trust, it's the illusion of consistency. The idea that words and reality are aligned. And in that moment, you don't just lose a relationship, you lose your sense of control over the world. But Machiavelli doesn't suggest we abandon appearances, he suggests we master them. The wise don't demand sincerity, they study it. They don't assume alignment, they test it. Appearances can be useful tools, but only if we know what they're hiding. Loyalty in its most dangerous form is not false, it's unexamined. And in a society built on performance, the only safety is awareness. Know what people show you, but more importantly, learn to see what they don't. Behind every "I'll never leave you" is a calculation waiting to change. Understand that, and you move through the world, not with fear, but with focus. Not cynical, but prepared. Even if loyalty is often an illusion, it remains one of the most powerful illusions ever created. Because without it, without the belief in loyalty, entire societies would collapse into mistrust, paranoia, and isolation. Machiavelli understood this duality better than most. He knew that while loyalty might not be absolute, the belief in it serves an essential purpose. It stabilizes the chaos. It binds people together, not because the bond is real, but because the belief in it creates order, predictability, and cohesion. Loyalty, even when conditional, becomes a kind of glue holding together fragile systems. Families, businesses, political alliances, even nations. In a world full of uncertainty, people crave something to hold on to. The idea that someone is loyal to you, no matter what, is a deeply comforting story. It shields you from the constant fear of abandonment. It allows you to focus on work, on love, on building a life without constantly scanning the horizon for signs of betrayal. And so we cling to it, not because it's always true, but because we need it to feel secure. That's why betrayals hurt so much. Not only because they wound us emotionally or practically, but because they shatter the entire framework we've built our emotional lives around. A friend leaving is one thing, but the collapse of what you thought was real loyalty, that's a spiritual earthquake. Machiavelli never denied the value of loyalty. He simply wanted us to understand its mechanics, to realize that people don't stay because they swore an oath. They stay because the environment gives them a reason to. In politics, leaders maintain loyalty by managing perception and incentives. In families, loyalty is held together not only by love, but by shared history, obligation, and mutual need. In business, employee loyalty is often tied to recognition, compensation, and the fear of instability. These structures don't guarantee loyalty, but they delay its collapse by increasing the cost of leaving. And that's the deeper truth. The appearance of loyalty often functions but better than the reality of it. It gives people something to rally around. It allows cooperation, collaboration, and community, even if all of it is balancing on invisible calculations. When we perform loyalty, we participate in a larger psychological game that helps the world keep spinning. It may not always be honest, but it works. And in that function there is wisdom, not blind faith, but strategic belief. A recognition that sometimes the lie of loyalty holds more power than the truth of disconnection. And navigating that tension is the art of surviving in a world built on shifting sands. In the hands of the powerful, loyalty isn't a virtue, it's a weapon. Machiavelli knew this. He saw that in politics, in leadership, in family dynamics, the concept of loyalty is often less about mutual respect and more about control. The powerful demand loyalty as a one-way contract, absolute when it benefits them, flexible when it does not. A ruler expects unwavering loyalty from subjects, but reserves the right to betray allies if it secures advantage. A CEO will expect employees to suffer through layoffs and restructuring for the company, yet offer no such loyalty in return. Even in personal relationships, the partner with more emotional, social, or financial power often expects deeper loyalty, while quietly reserving the right to withdraw whenever it suits them. This asymmetry isn't accidental. It's strategic. Machiavelli understood that the expectation of unconditional loyalty serves to bind the less powerful to lock them into obedience, sacrifice, and silence, all under the illusion of shared values. Meanwhile, those in control remain fluid, uncommitted, and free. Loyalty becomes a tool, not for connection, but for compliance. A mask of morality concealing a deeply transactional reality. And yet the brilliance of this manipulation lies in how loyalty is framed. Not as an obligation to the powerful, but as a mark of your own character. If you leave a toxic job, you're labeled disloyal. If you break from a failing political party, you're called a traitor. If you walk away from a family member who's been emotionally abusive, you're accused of betrayal. The powerful rewrite the meaning of loyalty to preserve their dominance, turning morality into a leash. Machiavelli didn't condemn this as evil, he simply saw it for what it was. A reflection of how power works in the real world. Loyalty is not always about trust. Often it is about leverage. If you want to navigate power without becoming a pawn, you must see loyalty not as sacred, but as strategic theater, and understand that those who demand it the loudest are often the ones least willing to give it. We like to think people stay loyal because they care, because they love us, believe in us, or feel morally obligated to do the right thing. But Machiavelli cuts through that comforting belief with a sharper truth. It's not morality that holds people in place, it's consequence. Love is unpredictable, moral conviction is fragile, but fear is reliable. When people know that betrayal comes with a cost, legal, financial, social, or reputational loyalty becomes far more stable. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "It is far safer to be feared than loved." Not because fear is cruel, but because fear creates structure. Fear enforces the rules that morality alone cannot. In our modern world, we see this logic everywhere. Not in brute violence, but in systems. Employment contracts don't inspire loyalty through affection. They include non-compete clauses, severance terms, and legal deterrents. Marriage isn't just a romantic agreement. It's a legally binding contract with financial consequences for abandonment. Even international treaties between allied nations come with explicit terms of violation, not because countries trust one another, but because the cost of betrayal has been made high. These aren't accidents. These are structures designed to turn conditional loyalty into something sustainable, not through emotion, but through incentive and deterrent. This may feel cold. We want relationships to be about trust and love, not leverage and risk. But Machiavelli wasn't suggesting we abandon connection, only that we understand what actually holds it together. People behave better when the consequences of betrayal outweigh the benefits. It's not cynicism, it's strategy. And ironically, it may lead to more honesty, not less. When boundaries are clear and stakes are high, expectations become explicit. There's less room for blind idealism and more space for mutual accountability. This insight can also be applied personally if you want loyalty. Build environments where loyalty is rewarded and betrayal costs something. Whether that's in business, friendship, or love, the most resilient bonds are not those built solely on emotion, but those strengthened by clarity, boundaries, and aligned interests. Make it easy to stay. Make it costly to leave. And you'll find that what we call loyalty often follows naturally. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in glorifying fear, but in recognizing its role as a guardrail, a psychological force that turns fragile emotion into lasting commitment. Because when morality falters, and it often does, consequence is what keeps the foundation from collapsing. Not because people are evil, but because people are human. We often believe that love, friendship, or moral duty will keep people close, but Machiavelli offers a sobering truth. What holds people together most reliably isn't emotion. It's aligned interest. People stay loyal, not because they care deeply, but because their goals are still compatible with yours. The illusion of loyalty often crumbles the moment those goals diverge. Think of the business partner who once called you family until profits fell and a better offer came along. Or the friend who was always there until your life path no longer served theirs. Or the spouse who promised forever until staying no longer aligned with their personal growth. These aren't betrayals in the traditional sense. They are outcomes. When interests shift, so do allegiances. And yet many of the most enduring partnerships in life and history haven't been built on emotional intensity, but on shared purpose. Two people rowing in the same direction, not because they love the boat, but because they both want to reach the same shore. Machiavelli understood that aligned self-interest creates a more durable bond than sentiment ever could. Emotional loyalty may feel noble, but it's vulnerable to exhaustion, to resentment, to time. Interest-based loyalty, on the other hand, is functional. It adapts, it negotiates, it evolves. That's why some friendships last decades with minimal drama, because both people benefit in ways that are mutual and ongoing. It's why business partners who barely like each other still build empires, because their incentives are structured for survival and success. And it's why love, though powerful, often isn't enough when the underlying interests are out of sync. A relationship where one person wants stability and the other craves freedom will strain no matter how deep the affection once ran. Emotion can ignite connection, but only aligned interest sustains it. This doesn't mean relationships must be cold or calculated. It means they should be conscious. When we understand that loyalty flows from relevance, usefulness, and shared direction, we stop being blindsided when emotional bonds alone prove insufficient. We start building systems of interdependence, mutual benefit, and real partnership. That's not manipulation, it's wisdom. Machiavelli wasn't against love or loyalty. He simply taught us not to rely on them blindly. Because when you align your interests with others professionally, personally, politically, you don't have to force loyalty. It emerges naturally, not from obligation, but from utility. And in a world of shifting emotions, that kind of loyalty is the only kind that endures. In a world where loyalty is conditional and interests shift like the wind, trusting blindly is no longer a virtue, it's a liability. Machiavelli never suggested we become heartless or paranoid, but he warned us of the dangers of naive trust. Real survival, he taught, begins when we replace blind trust with strategic trust. A trust rooted in observation, not hope. In alignment, not assumptions. To move wisely through human relationships, you must understand not only who someone is, but what they need, what pressures they face, and what options they're weighing behind the curtain of loyalty. This mindset isn't about cold detachment, it's about emotional maturity. It's the quiet strength of someone who loves deeply, but doesn't mistake love for permanence. Someone who gives opportunities but pays attention to the incentive structures beneath the surface. Strategic trust asks, what does this person stand to gain by staying loyal? What do they risk if they betray me? Where are their pressures likely to come from? It doesn't mean you stop trusting it. It means you trust with your eyes open. This kind of clarity is liberating. It frees you from the emotional roller coaster of unmet expectations and shocked betrayals. You no longer crumble when someone leaves because you understood on some level that the bond was built on shifting ground. You weren't asleep to it, you were simply calculating whether the risk was worth the reward. And in many cases, it still is strategic. Trust allows you to build meaningful relationships without worshiping them. It makes space for reality, for change, for complexity, and it helps you avoid being blindsided in business. This means creating agreements that reflect what people are likely to do, not what they promise. In friendships, it means noticing who shows up when it costs them something, and who disappears the moment the benefits fade. In love, it means holding space for deep connection while still being grounded in the truth. Even the strongest feelings don't guarantee alignment forever. Strategic trust honors the beauty of connection while preparing for its fragility. Machiavelli didn't ask us to become cynics. He asked us to become conscious, to stop building castles of loyalty in the sky and start anchoring our relationships to something stronger than fantasy. Because when you understand trust as a strategic mechanism, not a blind belief, you stop being the victim of shifting winds and start steering through them. Loyalty isn't dead, it's just not what we were taught it is. We've been fed a version of loyalty drenched in sentiment, one that insists true loyalty is unconditional, eternal, and pure. That version is beautiful, but it's also dangerously naive. The truth is, loyalty exists, just not in the way most people imagine. Machiavelli didn't deny loyalty. He redefined it. He pulled back the curtain on the illusion and revealed that loyalty, when it lasts, is not some magical moral force. It is a structure, a fragile equilibrium of interests, boundaries, shared benefits, and yes, consequences. And when we begin to see loyalty through that lens, we stop idealizing it and start managing it. This shift doesn't make us colder. It makes us wiser. It allows us to build loyalty the way an architect builds a bridge, not by hoping it holds, but by calculating every tension point, every possible stressor, and reinforcing it where it matters most. Because loyalty that endures doesn't come from vows made in comfort. It comes from systems that hold together in discomfort. It's born in crisis, maintained through aligned interest, and protected by consequence. That kind of loyalty is real, because it's designed to withstand pressure, not collapse under it. Once we understand that, we can stop asking the wrong questions. Why did they leave? How could they betray me? And instead begin asking better ones. What changed in the structure? Where did our interests diverge? What signs did I ignore because I wanted the illusion more than the reality? These questions don't just bring insight, they bring power. Because now loyalty is no longer a matter of luck or morality. It's something you can build, test, and strengthen. In this way, Machiavelli's vision of loyalty isn't bleak, it's liberating. It frees us from the victimhood of betrayal and replaces it with strategy. It teaches us to stop expecting permanence from emotion and start seeking it through structure. Loyalty that is understood as conditional can still be deep, powerful, even beautiful. But it's beautiful because it's real, because it's chosen again and again, not assumed. Because it exists not in fantasy, but in the hard-won reality of shared direction, mutual gain, and conscious commitment. So no, loyalty isn't dead. But if we keep misunderstanding it, we'll keep losing it. Machiavelli didn't ask us to abandon trust, love, or loyalty. He simply asked us to see them as they are and build from there. Because that's how loyalty lives, not in blind devotion, but in truth. In a world where relationships are shaped by shifting interests and subtle calculations, the most important lesson is this. Stop expecting loyalty to be unconditional. That expectation doesn't protect you, it exposes you. We've all been taught that loyalty is a moral absolute, a virtue that defines character. But as Machiavelli showed, real loyalty isn't sustained by love or principle alone. It's held together by aligned interests, mutual benefit, and meaningful consequences. This doesn't mean you have to live in fear or become cynical. It means you start thinking like a strategist in business. Don't assume a colleague is loyal just because they're friendly. Ask what incentives keep them aligned with you. In personal relationships, don't confuse affection with permanence. Examine whether your goals are still shared. And when someone walks away, don't take it as a betrayal of your worth. See it as a signal that the structure changed and maybe you missed it. The most resilient people aren't the ones who trust blindly. They're the ones who trust consciously, who build loyalty not on fantasy, but on clarity, boundaries, and reciprocity. They reward loyalty, enforce standards, and accept that people change. That's not weakness, that's strength. So instead of demanding blind devotion, create environments where loyalty makes sense, where staying is more rewarding than leaving, and where respect flows both ways. Loyalty isn't dead, but it's not magic. It's built. And the sooner we stop worshiping it and start understanding it, the stronger, wiser, and more unbreakable we become.